Welcome back to Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee. I'm CarrieVee, your biggest fan, the person who will believe in you until you can believe in yourself. Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee is all things leadership, communication, confidence, clarity, and real life. And joining us today are George and Tracy, and I've been so excited about having them on the show because when they reached out to me and I went and peeped their website and looked about what they were all about, it is like it was a match made in heaven. I was so excited to have them on the show, to bring them to you and to have them pour into you. And I know you're going to love this. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see them. If you're listening on the podcast apps, head to YouTube so you can see these two amazing people, and you're going to connect with them as soon as you see how open and joyful and real and authentic that they show up on screen. So without further ado, George and Tracy, welcome to Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. It's so good to be here with you.
Good to be here with you.
We're excited too. It feels like there are so many places that we are synced up with our what we're passionate about.
Yes.
And also our perspective.
Yeah.
So thanks for having us.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So we want to know, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you going? What makes you want to get out there and serve your clients?
That's a great question. And it jumps off how we intersect and crisscross perfectly, because, we've been saying for years, 55 years between us in two separate careers, about the power of language and how the results we experience, the life we live, all of the experiences are direct results of all of the conversations we've taken part in, participated in, or overheard of our entire lifetimes. So we know on a cellular level how powerful the words we choose actually are. And hearing your story about how your brother's experience inspired you deeply to live more touched us on a very personal level. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. Wow. The last time, about 6.5, 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia. It was slowly destroying my bone marrow. Tracy and I went right into the hospital with knowing the power of our words, and every word, every thought, every feeling setting the stage for a result somewhere else in our lives. And that crisscross and intersection for us just felt like, oh, we love her really already.
Deeply.
Wow. I am at a loss for words to hear of that journey, and that there's nothing quite as grounding, devastating, eye-opening as hearing the words, "You have cancer." Perspective changes in very real ways. We, as much as you want to share of that story, we would love to hear.
Well, I think thank you for that invitation, because what's exciting about that is we both obviously have our own experiences, and we have a collective experience, and they're potent for us. So we're happy to dive into it.
And I think what's important is that the first experience was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then the experience about 6.5 or 7 years ago was a residual, like, the first time they thought you were cancer free afterwards, and after you had how much percentage of your
So the first time I was diagnosed, I was super active, very busy. I just started a charity. I had my speaking business. I had my law practice. Everything was very busy. So I was ignoring symptoms. For well over a year. And by the time I was diagnosed, I had 20% of the functional blood in my body.
Wow.
And 0 bone marrow. And of course, what I came to learn was, without bone marrow, you don't make new blood. And I was running out of blood. So things were really dire. And I went in and asked myself an important question that came to be more and more important over the years. What condition might I have created and maintained in my consciousness for such a long period of time to create an atmosphere in my body so hospitable to such an aggressive disease? And asking that question 20 years ago instantly, without in deep meditation, without any hesitation, I knew the answer. I needed to forgive myself for something. And I went
Wow.
about doing that in order not to create some miraculous healing, but rather in order to bring the full power of my biology to partner with my caregivers. So when we went so healing ensued, and renewal ensued, and a new life of perspective began.
And purpose. So you
Yeah.
wrote a book, you were
Wrote
out
several books
teaching
and
with,
start teaching and working with cancer survivors.
and really like that became such a driving force for you.
Driving force.
Yeah.
And then 6-7 years ago, Tracy and I are now partnered, and the doctor would go for a regular follow-up, and the doctor says, you have a residual presence of this disease. We were very careful to say residual because it wasn't a recurrence. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And I went right back to that same question. What conditions had I created? And right away in meditation again, I became aware that I had been harboring residual resentments. And what could we do to address that?
And literally it was a we. So when you went into the hospital, so we just knew it was 7 days of chemo treatment. And I got a bed in the hospital room, changed everything. We were going into this experience together. And I was also doing my work because I believe, and we believe that we have the opportunity, like whatever's around us, we can leverage it for the greatest growth. And so
the greatest growth of us, for our community, for our clients,
Yes.
for all of it.
And so, yeah, so you went into meditation, and then I looked at what resentments am I holding? And we did some really, really deep work. And I mean, it was an intense healing experience. Thankfully, on day 7, the doctor came in and said to George, "You're the healthiest person here. So get out,
This
get him
building is for
home,
sick.
get out of here," you know?
Wow.
And just to close that loop, and you are cancer free. Every checkup test, blood test is perfect. In terms of the power of language and intention, so we were deep in that work. Every time they brought the chemotherapy and the medicine, we would say a prayer.
It was every day. It was 24-hour infusion for 7 days straight.
Oh,
And
wow.
each day they came in to refill the chemo.
Yeah, they came in, fully dressed with all of the protective garb because this was so toxic.
Yeah.
And the prayer was, this is light entering. I mean, George, do you want to say it? And then I'll add.
We know a little bit more about the physical world than we did 20 years ago. Quantum physics has taught us a lot about energy and the power of our intentions. So we said, look, at the end of the day, this substance that they were all masked up and to protect themselves from, that they were about to put into my body, is at its essence light. That we know that this medicine will enter my body as light and bring light to the dark places. And when we said this prayer, this intention, this meditation over the medicine, each day, day in and day out, the nurses and the techs started gathering. They were like, "Hey, he's doing that thing. Come on in." And by day 7, they were circled around our bed. I say our bed, and we prayed on the medicine. And there was, of course, not a dry eye in the room, including our own. It was deeply inspiring, and we believe that those words have power. And even if, and I think this is something we think this is something that you'll really resonate with, even if the only thing that those words do is bring us fully to the moment. Even, we can't point to the microscope slide that says that prayer did this thing.
Yes.
But we know with every cell of our bodies that prayer brought the fullness of us into that moment.
Yes.
And then the team can do their thing. And this is so, take us out, put you in, right? This is so applicable, and we've, working with couples and spiritually inspired entrepreneurs and purpose-driven leaders, we know that this experience is applicable. The words, the feelings, the intentions have an impact, if only because they bring you fully into the moment. Then you're there to serve, you're there to meet whatever is needed.
This is, I mean, I have chills upon chills upon chills upon chills listening to this journey, and knowing that you are bringing it to other people, and just hearing, like, I wish I could have had you in my family's life for all of these years. Cancer has been an ever-present presence in our family, and nobody could put together the pieces of why everybody was, not everybody, but many were getting colon cancer, and it was always fatal. And when I was diagnosed with the same cancer in December of 2020, and having surgery in January of 2021, it floored me, because I was doing what I thought everything was right. I followed every single thing every doctor told me, and what I actually was told was, colon cancer is never hereditary. You don't ever have to worry about it as long as you do this, this, and this. I know. I saw that look on your faces. And so when I was diagnosed, I immediately, as you did, George, I started to really dig deep into myself, because the thought of having to tell my mother, who was then living with us, that another of her children had colon cancer was something that I didn't even know how I was going to tell her. And so I started digging deep, as you did. Where am I? What am I? What else could there be? And it led us on a long path. This is not my podcast. I just want to pour into what you are saying. I mean, I really want everybody to hear more of what you do as cancer survivor and cancer caregiver. I've now been on both sides of that coin, and each of those journeys is very, very different. I ended up being diagnosed with Lynch syndrome, and then my mother in the same year was diagnosed with Lynch syndrome. We found out she had massive tumors in her colon. She died in my arms 19 days after they found them. It was a hellacious year, but it was also a year of that deep searching, George, that you're talking about, and really digging deep into myself as to what am I holding on to that is creating this hostile environment. Lynch syndrome or not, what am I doing? What am I holding on to? And really learning to let go, and to spend time every single day laughing, which was huge. And
huge.
So go ahead, ping pong off of that.
Yeah, I want to say something about that, because I feel like it's in the fabric of what you're saying and what we're talking about, and I want to make it explicit. Part of our passion is conscious communication and making the invisible visible. So in order to ask a question like, what is going on inside of me that would create this, that makes it hospitable, was the word that George used. The word that you just used was about the hostility in your body. I feel like it's so important to name that the underlying consciousness or intention is not to create more self-judgment and more self-blame or shame, because those questions could actually take somebody potentially down a road that could be even more dark and scary, and instead to bring some love and light, and not just fluffy love. Like when we talk about love, because we talk a lot about speaking, leading, and holding safe space for conversations with love. And so it's not just like a fluffy kind of love. It's that deep, 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 grounded and reverential, humble, spiritual, like fierce love. Like what about my thoughts, myself, my conversations, what have I been doing that don't really work for me? and how can I bring love to those places in order
Yes.
to create the healing. So this deeper exploration is about going in with a flashlight of gentleness and grace and understanding that is bigger often than our own understanding.
Yes.
You know, it's got it, like there's a bigger purpose. We call it in our work, in our world, we call it your soul's curriculum. Like,
Mhm.
what am I here to live and learn and to grow in that would help me, that could be of service to others? And then the other piece about that is, who around me can I have that kind of a tender conversation with that isn't going to jump into a, oh yeah, well, we gotta be, like
Yeah,
something
that's
like
terrible.
that. Like,
We call
oh
that jumping in the boat, you know.
yeah,
Ah,
but rather somebody who can be in that tender space with an open-hearted holding an open-hearted willingness to say, like, this is hard. This is really like hard and terrible. And at the same time, what do you think underneath is going on that we could bring love to, that we can heal, that we can forgive, that we can
yeah.
grow, you know? So yeah, I want to make that explicit in the invisible visible, that to go in and ask these deeper questions needs to have the tool, the flashlight of some love,
Mm.
kindness, and grace.
Nice.
That is beautiful. I'm having so many chills. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I just would love to springboard off of that.
Yes,
Something
please.
Tracy said something that I just felt this whole body chill when you said fierce love. You know, Tracy and I, we met and were married in 35 days. So we were a stand for each other from the word go. We knew what that we were up to something and that we could be up to something together. And our first vow in our marriage vows is I promise to
Hold you to your highest.
to your highest. And what we have found, so we work also with enterprising couples who are up to something. That's how we describe it. Who are up to something together. And when we think about the fierce love that we have for each other, it's the fierce stand that we take for each other, which sometimes, by the way, is not comfortable. Like sometimes that looks like, hey, I know there's more in you. I'm asking you to step into that version of you, or
Oh yeah, it's
hey,
messy.
where it can get
It's
messy.
messy. It's like, let's be real. It's messy, you know?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
true. And what we have found is that if you can suspend taking that messiness personally and remember, oh yeah, we're actually a stand for each other's highest, then the messiness is worth it.
And we're in this to grow together.
Yeah.
We're in this to keep growing and expanding.
In this to grow together. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Oh,
I think, and this is my opinion, and maybe you can speak to this. I found it much easier to be the one with the cancer than the one caring for the patient with the cancer. I found it much, much easier to be the one going through the treatments, going through the surgeries, hearing the words, than being the one on the other side, which is where I have spent most of my time, with my brother, with my mother, a year after my mother, with my aunt as she passed from ovarian cancer. It was brutal to be on the other side. So how did you navigate as a couple being together, going through this? And you've spoken to this some, but I would love to hear a little bit more if you're able to share on that journey.
Yeah.
beautiful question.
It's a beautiful question. I can't help it. I'm curious. Could you just say a little bit more about what was it for you that felt better on that side?
On the side of being the patient,
Of being the patient rather than the caregiver.
Oh, right.
I think that though it's not really the case, I felt more in control. I felt more like I knew what to do for myself, but I didn't always know what to do for my brother, my mother, my aunt. It may not even be the truth, but it is how I felt.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like for us and everyone listening, I that felt like an important piece to bring into the conversation.
Mm.
And I love and respect that you just said that may not have been the truth, but that was what was true for you in that experience.
Mhm.
And so I can answer the question about what it was like for us as a couple. And from
Yeah.
my perspective, and then you can jump in. There were two things that I have to say. And I was very close with my late grandfather, who took his last breath in my arms, and he died from cancer as well. And just there, but one, George having gone through it the first time for me, and then all of the work, I would say that. This is great. Actually, I really appreciate sort of saying this as we go, is that was a factor for me. Like, I knew he got through it. It was in our
Yeah.
conversation, I think, because you were talking to cancer survivors. It was in the conversation from an empowering
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
And then I would say, but I think even in the absence of that, because we are so devoted to having conversations and using words and language, not like a spiritual bypass. We call that spiritual saran wrap, where we just gloss over things or
Mm.
wrap something up that's really stinky. And
Yeah.
so, oh no, I'm good. I'm forgiven. I
Mhm.
forget, like I'm good, and that's not really what's going on. Yeah, we call that spiritual saran
I
wrap.
love that.
But I feel like because that's our commitment, we're committed to feel and not step over anything. We do that in our work with our clients as well, like really hold the space to feel all the feelings and alchemize it, bring love and turn it into a higher frequency, finding the gold.
Without adding the weight of shame or blame or any of that.
Yeah.
And if there is shame or blame,
Pulling it out.
working with
Right.
it, but not adding to it.
Yes.
And so I feel like that created the conversation and the context for us to put our energy into healing.
Mhm.
When I went in and I said, I put a bed in there and I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do my inner work also. Because
Yeah.
if I'm contributing, or if there's anything that in my consciousness I could clear out. And of course, like the truth is that was secondary to making sure that George was okay.
Yes.
My caregiving was first.
Yes.
But being a participant in it and being partnered in it from a healing standpoint, and trusting that we were going to, and you were a huge part of this attitude of like, we're going to not beat it, because that's not your language. We're going to heal from this.
Mm.
This is going to grow. We're going to do the things to heal and grow.
That's a really big piece, like what you just shared about the language again, that the vocabulary we adopt for a particular experience makes such a difference. For
Mhm.
instance, and I love how you just recalled the language for me has never been, and for us was never, beat this, or we're gonna battle this. And I authentically appreciate that that metaphor works for a lot of people.
Yes.
It never worked for me. And when I share it with audiences, 20,000 some people at this point, survivors and caregivers, this idea of a different metaphor, of a metaphor of making peace with
Mm.
a particular experience, whether it's
Yes.
cancer or a conflict with a family member or a client or a prospect, making peace with a particular challenge rather than battling it or overcoming it or beating it. And because I remember from my first experience, the language was largely, you can do this, George, you have so much to live for, you can beat this and battle it. And I said, please don't, when referring to me, don't hold that I'm battling anything.
Yeah.
Don't hold that I'm, because there are two things that I know when I've shared these with, when we've shared them with audiences, they have embraced it as refreshing. This idea that this cancer that is growing in my bone marrow at the time was not something from outside of me, not a bullet or an arrow. It wasn't a poison that I had swallowed. It was a cell, a George cell in my body growing at outrageous rates, right?
Yes.
But the key was that it was a George cell. It was me. It wasn't the identity of me. It was a me cell. And why would I wage war on any part of me? And rather bring the light and the love to those me cells that were gone awry, bring gratitude to them, and let them die in the ordinary course of the treatment without mourning and without, just let them go, and then work on the replacing of me with healthy cells. And then, so when I first went into the hospital 20 years ago, my sister, day 3, and I was going to bed every night thinking I'm not going to wake up in the morning for the first couple of weeks. I was hospitalized for 28 days.
Wow.
And I was going to bed thinking, I'm not going to wake up the next morning. And my sister said, well, you wrote the book. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I had published the year before my very first book, which was a marathon training manual I had written for a client of mine. And so I took her words to heart, and I brought that manual and I started following it in the hospital, like every day. It has journal pages. Jumper Cables for the Marathon Runner's Soul is the name of the book. And then 20 years or 15 years later, I'm in the hospital, and Tracy's like, well, you wrote the book. And I had written a book, I Cancer, about the healing experience. So I got that book out, started working, doing the worksheets and the point is that the peace metaphor, I was reminded of that we're waging peace in this room. We're waging peace in our space.
And I want to just jump in and say, and when I couldn't hold it, we had just a few people, very few, dear friends who could hold me and remind me of the higher truth, remind me of the healing. And so our conversation, and I know you're also deeply passionate about communication, but also community and having empowerment and that around you.
Yes.
And so we had that too. And I had that too as the caregiver, so that I had a place to break down. I had a place to be lifted up, and I had a place to be strengthened and reinforced with the only conversation that we were committed to having, which was the conversation of healing and possibility. Not like we didn't cry or say, I feel scared. We did that. And we kept coming back to the higher truth of how, we're going to be okay. How we're going to get through this, and we're going to heal.
I absolutely love the whole healing piece there. And I know that that's not what I called it when I went through my own cancer journey. And looking at, I have a biopsy coming up on July 11th. I have no idea what that will show, but already bringing myself into this mindset again of, well, I'm going to call it healing now since I spoke with you.
Good.
Then it was laughter. I am going to laugh. I am going to have joy through this entire journey. That was how my brother journeyed through it. He never gave up hope. He laughed every day. And it was amazing to watch his 3-year journey from diagnosis to when he passed. It was amazing, and a very different journey than my aunt, who passed away from ovarian cancer, who never let go of the anger. It was very, very different.
Yeah.
I want to speak peace and joy and love and hope every
Yeah.
day of our lives, no matter what we're facing. So, but you just gave me that word healing, and I just can feel it spreading warmth. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing what you just did, because first of all, we're holding the highest with you.
Absolutely.
So we're knowing that you are in perfect health and wholeness, and we're going to hold that with you.
Every cell, every tissue, every organ, and every system.
That's a great,
Thank you.
one of the things we could share is the thank you body.
Yeah.
So George created a beautiful mantra, like we literally have friends who put it as their screensaver on their phone, and it's thank you body. Every cell, every organ, every system functioning in perfect synchronicity for my highest good. Thank you body. So that is part of what we're doing. Even when it's not great, it's like, thank you body. There's something you're trying to get my attention towards. Thank you body.
Yeah.
And that's a practice. It's like our big thing is about taking spiritual ideas or positive personal growth ideas and making it very practical in everyday, practical in leadership, practical
Business,
in relationship and business. And so that's a very practical idea of really like how to live from this idea that I'm meant to grow, and that what's happening is happening for me in a way. And that's a huge idea.
Yeah, it is.
Huge idea. So bringing joy, and I'm inspired by what you shared about your brother, and I have compassion for what you said about your aunt.
Yes.
That's the human experience.
Yes, it is.
And life is going to keep bringing us. And, I know you mentioned this in another podcast. We're listening. Is also about the state of the world right now.
Yes.
And people stopping talking, like just, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Or the ways that I'm super passionate about that too. That's another conversation for another time. This idea of whatever's happening in life is actually at the highest place trying to evolve us.
Yes.
And so learning to navigate anger and learning to find joy and learning to stand for healing in the midst of pain. This is what it means to live more consciously.
Yes.
Bring the language and communication and conversations into a higher place to authentically.
Yeah.
And for a world that appears to be needing elevation at a faster and faster pace, we're passionate about creating what we call leaders of light, people who are willing to hold that frequency in the face of everything that life has to offer, has to challenge us with holding the frequency. Not again, what did you not by spiritual saran wrap or fluffy love
or positivity? Like I heard the expression toxic
positivity. Yep.
Not that
Pollyanna, right?
Yeah, not that at all.
But by authentically standing in the power of the certainty of it, and maybe you call it faith, but there's a certainty that whatever is happening is creating an opportunity for me to be biggest in myself.
And if it's wobbly, which I know for me it is, and for us it's like we're doing our work every day too. We're something feels certain, so that it actually is authentic and embodied, and that it's not the absence of stuff that happens to us. It's what we do with that stuff and how we turn it into greater love and greater purpose.
This is such an amazing conversation. I have to say, I am very rarely left speechless. I am very rarely left blown away, but I am both. I am both. I am so, I don't know exactly how you found me, but I am so glad you did. I am so glad you reached out, and I'm so glad I clicked on your email and then went and peeped at your website, which was amazingly fabulous. You have touched my heart. I know everybody who listens to this podcast is going to be touched, and in unbelievable ways. And I can't imagine not having you back as regular guests, because I feel like there are so many directions and so many fingers that we can follow.
We have the expression, we're just getting started.
Just getting started. That's how we felt too when we looked at your website and listened to it. It's like, Come on.
Where have you
Really?
been?
Exactly. Let's talk. So that's exciting.
I'm already thinking live events. I mean, my brain
Oh.
is going
Like what
crazy.
you're thinking.
Just completely 100% on the same path where you are, and seeing the hearing, seeing, feeling, experiencing the attitudes in the world around me, even just sitting in a restaurant and just being privy to conversations, not eavesdropping, but hearing them, or seeing everybody at the table, everybody on their phones, everybody, nobody talking. But then when you hear the talking, it is completely negative, or tearing someone else down, or I don't like that person because they don't believe what I believe. We don't have to believe the same thing. We still get to value each other. And there's so much, I see that in both of you too, that this is a world where we can bring healing, and we can bring love, and we can bring so much joy and peace.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love that that's who you are.
Well,
Thank you.
we we see you doing that
Yeah.
with this, using this vehicle for that.
Yeah.
We see you so clearly doing that, and just I want to acknowledge that.
Thank
Yeah.
you, George. Thank you.
And you know, everything that you just said, it's about sharing more of the consciousness and the practical tools to shift those conversations. Like our
Yes.
mission is to elevate consciousness by elevating conversations,
Yes.
and having more people learn how to lean in when it's so tempting to pull back,
Yes.
and find forgiveness, understanding. We do things different. We do that. Like, you know,
Yeah.
we have our own, I don't know, like hours ago, we were in a thing, and we're, you know, constantly listening. Like, what are you saying? And okay, that's not how I'm I didn't even hear you. I'm in such reaction right now.
Yes.
You know, but this idea of how can we create a world where people really are listening and choosing to, if we make a mess, we clean it up,
Mhm.
and we can give each other that space and that grace, and learn the tools for that. Part of our vision is to infuse artificial intelligence with loving conversations,
Mm.
and making that accessible to young people, and
Yes.
you know, just all generations who really need to know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And that we're meant to grow. We're meant to grow together.
Yes.
There's so much more that we like.
So we're excited.
We're excited.
Me too. Me too. And what I really love is you're bringing it without, it's not judgment. It's not, you're so negative, you need to change. It's the education and the love that you bring to this conscious conversation. And you never even have to say the word, you're doing it wrong. It's just modeling.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for seeing that. And you know what we owe a refrain that we're often returning to is, we're not broken, we're conditioned. There's so much that that you would choose differently if you had the wherewithal. And now that you have the wherewithal as an adult, becoming aware is the first instance. But when you were 7 years old and you had these conditions placed in your nervous system by people with probably good intentions, just didn't have the tools. Imagine being taught a belief at 5 years old and saying to your parents or your teacher or pastor or whoever at the time, saying, you know, I really appreciate that that's your perspective, but it doesn't really resonate in my nervous system. So I'm going to go ahead and weed that out and not take that on. Imagine being a 5-year-old having the wherewithal to do that.
And having adults who would respect and honor your perspective.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's what we say. It's like, you're not broken, you're conditioned. So there's no space for judgment, no need, no, you know.
Well, and if there's judgment,
to look at
then we're healing the judgment. So again, it's not denying it. It's about saying, I feel like we do this. George, you'll say to me, are you judging me right now? I'm not judging you. I'm not judging you. And then I turn around, shit, totally judging you. you know?
Yes, because
So-
we get to be humans.
Exactly. So it's not about being perfect. It's not about having it all together. It's really about being able to navigate this
Yeah.
and being around other people who are playing that same game, who are up to that
Yeah.
same thing and
Yes.
willing.
Oh
We
my
could go
gosh.
on.
Yeah, I know.
We keep starting conversations. We'll
No,
keep going.
we are too. I'm just going to go back and listen to this and take notes of all the conversations because you will come back and be regular guests, correct?
Thank you.
So happy
Absolutely. We'd
to.
love it.
Love it.
Good, because I am officially obsessed with George and Tracy now.
And apparently now we're working toward a live event at some
Oh, yeah.
point. So
Stay
great.
tuned, everyone, because that's really going to be
We're
fun.
coming. We're
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good.
So George and Tracy, how can people tap into you? I don't even want to end this conversation, which means that before I let you go today, we are going to have a date for our next podcast recording. But how can people find you? Where can they tap into everything you have to offer?
Well, they
Thank you.
can find us on the interwebs at georgeandtracy.com, all spelled out.
Okay.
I think that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, and we have
Yeah.
some goodies for you there. And we could do, what about putting the thank you body?
Well, we have thankyouBody.love, which is a download of the Thank You Body meditation.
And we can
Okay.
give that to
Yeah,
you
that's
so
free.
that,
And
yeah,
Okay.
put that in
I'll
there.
make sure that's all linked in the show notes. So watching or listening, make sure you head to the show notes so you can just click on those hyperlinks and get to this easy enough. You don't have to type anything in. I'm just going to make sure that you can click and go and tap into George and Tracy. And they are going to give us a journal prompt now because I didn't even ask you if you believe in the power of journaling, but it's a huge part of
love you.
my life. And so would love to have you leave us with something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
that's
love
it.
to-
We love
We do
journaling.
believe in it.
Yeah, very much, in creating the opportunity for greater self-awareness
Yes.
through really listening deeply to ourselves. So we've referenced this in a few different ways through the conversation, but what feels very alive right now is this question of, maybe it might be two parts. What conditions, how did I create the conditions for something that might not be awesome right now?
Okay.
Right? So maybe it's a healing situation or a relationship. So from a place of love, the prompt would be looking through eyes of love, which we would say looking through eyes of love. How did I create this condition? And what can I bring and do to forgive myself and love myself more, knowing that it was the best that I could do at that time? So it really is two parts. It's a willingness to go in with that flashlight of love, with eyes of love. How did I create this from a place of personal responsibility and love, not shame or wrong making? So how did I create these conditions, or what might there be, and then how can I bring forgiveness and greater understanding to myself and grace so I can grow from this?
Oh, beautiful.
That's a good one.
It's an excellent one. I actually have my journal right to my left here on my desk, so I will be doing that even before this podcast launches next week. So I can start working on that myself. All right, before we let you go, your version, and I would love for both of you to answer this question, of your Pow Pow shoes.
Pow Pow shoes.
Yeah, they don't have to be real shoes though.
Oh,
Yeah, but
I mean, mine happen to be rhinestone stilettos, but
I love that. I want to see a picture of those.
I will show you.
I'd like rhinestone sneakers. So yeah, fit
Ooh,
stilettos. Okay.
Nice. You go first. Or I can
Go.
So I know that my superpower, everything that I have to offer in this world, every manner in which I have to serve, every opportunity to grow, comes from me being present in the moment. So if I have a pair of Pow Pow shoes, I just can't even say it without smiling. Is that which brings me into the present moment. They put those shoes on and forget that I have any resentments or anger or disappointments about the past, and forget that I have any anxiety or concerns about the future, and let all of that go to be in the present moment. If
Mhm.
if I have a pair of shoes that lets me do that, those are my go-to shoes.
Beautiful. I love it. Love
That's
it.
awesome. And what I would say for me is that, in using that expression, like, I know that one of my superpowers is to really find the love, and to
Mhm.
bring the a higher possibility, and in an integrated and embodied way, not just a conceptual. And so I would say, and for me, it's all God, or it's all spirit, or it's all love. I'll use that word. It's all love, because anything I'm saying is not in a religious context. It's a
Mhm.
spiritual context, consciousness context. So I would say that it's all love looking for love. Like, it's all love. So let's find it,
Like a comfy pair of slivers.
like a comfy pair of slippers.
Or Crocs, which is what's on my feet right now.
Good.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, George and Tracy. I can't wait to continue the conversation. I can't wait to get to know you better. And I can't thank you enough for hanging out with us today on Coffee and Tea with CarrieVee. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much.
CarrieVee, you are
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
a pleasure
Right
to
back
be here.
at you. We're super excited. Just
Thank
getting
you.
started, as we say. So thank you
That's
so much for having us.
exactly right. Thank you.